I want to take you quickly to the scene at about Michigan and Cermak. This is where the protest was scheduled to end today. And what you're seeing is an awful lot of police officers and other law enforcement officials who have gathered there trying to end the rally against NATO in a peaceful way. Just a few minutes ago, about 15 minutes ago, it was not so peaceful. There were skirmishes.
This is video that was captured of police using their billy clubs on the protesters just a few minutes ago as they tried to break through police lines.
Well, you can see that some of the protesters came armed with their own sticks. You can see them flailing away at police. This started when the protesters tried to break through this police line and head in a direction that authorities did not want them to head. That was the concern from all of this. We're live looking down at Michigan and Cermak as the standoff continues. This is live again. The concern was, where would all these protesters go, 2,500 to 3,000 of them perhaps, when this rally ended? All started up in Grant Park, marched to this location at Michigan and Cermak. Some veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan turned in their medals from those campaigns, saying they did not want those NATO medals. There was a very nice ceremony here. It looked like it would all be peaceful, and in fact, the protest organizers asked everyone to disperse peacefully at the conclusion of this.
ABC 7's investigative reporter Chuck Gowdy is joining us now. He has a close-up look at the confrontation that happened just moments ago and what's actually happening at 22nd and Cermak at this hour. Chuck.
Well, I think Chuck can't hear us at the moment, but Chuck Gowdy did follow the protest all the way, and one of the things he wanted to tell us was there is an organized group called the Black Bloc, and they are mostly identified by dressing all in black, and they mostly cover their faces. And in other cities around the world, when these kinds of events have been held, those typically have been the protesters who were intent on social disruption and even violence. And before this march even started, we are told that 7 persons dressed in black were taken aside, were arrested, and we don't know the circumstances of all of that. We're also told that another group of the apparent Black Bloc has broken off from this main group of protesters and moved off on their own.
And the theory for the Black Bloc organization, it started back in Europe, and it gained national attention here in 1999 in Seattle. We're going to go back now to Chuck Gowdy. He's joining us live now with an update on the confrontation. Chuck.
Okay, 22nd and Michigan right now was up for grabs for 5 or 6 minutes not long ago. It came at the very end of what was otherwise a relatively peaceful march and rally that ended here with veterans making impassioned speeches and pleas for peace in Afghanistan. It appeared as though there was a group of about 200 so-called Black Bloc individuals, people dressed in black with some kind of mask over their face. And as the rally was ending, the veterans were saying, we want to open up the Cermak Avenue so we could walk to the west and we could disperse. Well, the Black Bloc individuals who were waiting in the street did not want to do that, apparently, and that's when they started tangling with Chicago police at the end of the rally. There were a number of arrests as people were throwing things at Chicago police. At least one Chicago police officer was injured. We believe a lieutenant was hit in the head. Superintendent Gary McCarthy actually helped that lieutenant out of the line of fire, so to speak. Superintendent McCarthy is still here on the front lines trying to deal with these people and get them to disperse. There have been announcements made over the last 5 minutes encouraging people to leave, or there would be riot control measures, further riot control measures used. But for right now, the intersection of Michigan and Cermak is occupied by Chicago police as protesters have been moved to the sidewalks, and the police have, at least for the moment, attempted to get this under control.
Chuck, can you give us an idea, just an approximation of how many people were gathered at this part of the rally and whether any significant number of them have left?
How many? Of the police line as the rally was ending, and there were, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people or so, 700 to 1,000 people who remained here. A lot of people had left because the rally was winding down, but it was very clear to those of us who were watching this Black Bloc group that some of them had brought gas masks, some of them had covered up their backpacks in an effort to bring things out of it, and we knew that at some point there was going to be some kind of a confrontation or altercation here, and it happened at the very end when other people were trying to leave.
So, Chuck, from your vantage point, have you noticed if there have been any arrests of the protesters? We saw off camera there were some of the police officers dragging some of the protesters away. Do you know, or can you tell how many people have been arrested at this point?
I mean, I personally saw at least a half dozen people being taken away. Initially, the police took one man who was near the front lines, whether he was an organizer or whether he or something out of his backpack at police, I don't know, but the police did take him away. So there are at least a half a dozen in custody. That was just from my vantage point on this end of the perimeter. It's very likely that there were others on other parts of the protest clash with police who were taken into custody as well.
And, Chuck, we understand that at some point, some small group of people who would appear to be members of the Black Bloc broke off from all this and headed down Cermak. Do we know anything about that little breakaway group?
Well, there have been a couple of groups along the way this afternoon that broke away. Even before the rally or the march started, there were 7 members of the Black Bloc who were arrested after authorities found things in their possession that they thought could be used as missiles or weapons or something like that. Then, during the protest march itself, some of the what was a similar clash with police as the one we just saw here. The rest of the Black Bloc members continued on, and they made it down to Michigan and Cermak with the rest of the marchers relatively peacefully, although in some cases television crews and reporters took the brunt of their ire. They didn't seem to be protest, the people who were here covering it, or the police who were here trying to keep the peace.
All right, Chuck, we are having some trouble with your audio. We'll try and get that taken care of. Now, Ben Bradley was at on a truck that was at the head of this parade, if you will, that went from the Petrillo Bandshell down to this location in Michigan and Cermak.
And he's joining us live now from atop the double-decker bus. Ben?
Yeah, Cheryl, Ron, let's distinguish the two very separate events we have going on here. There was the incredibly peaceful march from Grant Park all the way down to Michigan and Cermak. You had the ceremony where the veterans turned over their medals, and then you had, as Chuck alluded to, the peace activists saying, okay, we're done, let's disperse. What you have going on now is a secondary event from people intent on lingering and in some cases intent on having conflict with police. Let's show you the backstop. This is where police are on standby should things continue to go south. You can see walls of dozens and dozens of police in full riot gear. These are state troopers directly ahead of us. In front of them, Chicago police officers also in riot gear. On their right hips, flex cuffs to arrest anyone who they deem worthy of that outcome. On their left hip, bags containing gas masks. Now, again, we have seen riot police move in at some points to try to disperse some people here, but so far there is still a lot in the way of backup should it be needed. There are also Chicago firefighters here with backpacks, both with fire extinguishers and water, should any element of this demonstration decide to begin to hurl foreign substances at police or others in this group.
All right,
what's going to happen over the next... Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
We're going to toss to Paul Meinke. He was with the veterans earlier today who had the symbolic ceremony. And as you said, there was a difference in the demonstration that led to this confrontation earlier today. So Paul Meinke is going to give us an update on what happened where he was. Paul?
Attention. This is the Chicago Police Department. You must disperse to the west.
I guess all of us are struck by two separate events here. One, as Chuck indicated and Ben said and Ron said, very peaceful, a very symbolic, very important moment for this whole protest parade, which was to be centered specifically around the vets. And, of course, everybody wondered what happens when their speeches are over. And the vets made it a point to announce to everyone, we are now leaving and we wish you would do the same. You're looking straight across. We've spoken a number of times about turtle suits. That's the heavy armor that the police have sought very much to avoid having to use, but it was always at the ready, a block or two away from any one of these events. They put that on, they moved out, and if you can hear it faintly in the distance, there is a machine called the Long-Range Acoustic Device. It is a sonic cannon. It sends messages out in a 30-degree cone, and it's very explicit. The messages are very clear to hear if you're within that cone or nearby. It is not loud. It does have the capability of delivering alarm tones, which are high frequency, and they are definitely not at all pleasant.
All right,
there are 13 recorded messages on that machine, some of them in Spanish. They've played them, and they essentially say, it's over, please leave. If you do not, you'll be in violation, subject to arrest. All right,
Paul,
Cheryl.
you told us about the LRAD communication device earlier and how effective it was in Pittsburgh at the G8 summit, so it appears that they're pulling it out today. You said the range could go as far as a football field, and you could hear it from that far away. So at this point, it sounds like they're trying to disperse the crowd. We noticed that there was a very large contingent of state police officers who have now joined in to aid with the demonstration at the 22nd and Michigan location.
Well, I understand Ravi Beshwal can now hear us, and Ravi's been right up above this, about one floor above all of this on the corner near Michigan and Cermak, where he's been able to watch it all. Ravi, can you hear us?
Yeah, I sure can, Ron, and actually I've been able to hear everything you've been saying right up to now. I'm right beside the camera that you're looking at, where the blue-helmeted Chicago police, riot police, are being backed up in a bit of a pincer movement by state police in their own riot gear. The state police have progressively come south on Michigan to join up with the horseshoe-shaped, blue-helmeted Chicago police to squeeze people down into the square and then to go west along Cermak. We are standing right above, maybe 14, 15 feet above the corner where the entire situation with the Chicago police began a little over half an hour ago. An absolutely bird's eye view, and all of our other correspondents, Chuck and Ben, have been exactly correct in describing how it transpired. The veterans, the other peaceful marchers, who were by far the majority here, listened attentively, cheered with the veterans were speaking, and then dispersed as they were being asked when this broke up around 4:45. In the meantime, the black-clad Black Bloc protesters, who had moved in a bit of a column west down Cermak, down the middle of the crowd, started to flow back, certainly after we got reports from Ben Bradley that they were being pushed back on Cermak over by State, and they were being pushed back into the square. The next thing you know, they came straight forward east and confronted the police officers in blue helmets who were lining the east side of Michigan and Cermak. That's when the truncheons came out, after clearly a range of provocation. And I have to say, honestly, as a reporter looking at it, a range of provocation on the part of those Black Bloc protesters. Now we see them dispersed in the crowd, people still hanging in there, a couple hundred strong as I look back east along Cermak. Most of the others have dispersed, but now what you're seeing is the state police and the Chicago police really coming together as two into one force, and clearly they intend to make this intersection and the people in it move west and clear and get them to move away, very much like the strategy that we heard last night in terms of how the crowds and the marchers were dealt with by the Chicago police. I can also report on the LRAD that is right here. It's broadcasting in English and in Spanish that the folks here are being asked to move, and if they don't move, pretty soon they will be in violation of the civil law. Ron and Cheryl, back to you.
All right, Robbie, thank you for that. Jody Weiss, the former superintendent of Chicago Police, has joined us on set here at State Street. He is now an